boldly engaging the mindless propaganda of our time, apparently with reason. This is Rage of the Age.
This is Rage of the Age, and we have with us today a former liaison for pro-family during the Bush administration. He was part of the Electoral College for North Carolina in 2020. He's a liaison for the Chuck Smith campaign in Virginia for Attorney General, and he's currently the Republican chair of Gates County, North Carolina. I want to introduce to you today Thomas Hill. Thomas, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Very humbling. Thank you.
Now, I recall when I first met you, it was, I want to say maybe about 2 years ago. We were at a Republican meeting together, and you were speaking, and I'm not trying to inflate your head or anything this morning, but the way you spoke was impressive to me. And what really caught my attention was your energy. You had energy, you were wanting to get stuff done, and you conveyed this mentality of we want to win, which I thought had been missing for quite some time within the party.
Sure.
And I've always been impacted by that, to some degree since then. And of course, I've been wanting to have you as a guest on this show for quite some time. I appreciate the opportunity having you here today. And we're going to talk primarily about the Republican Party as it is, projections, things we should do, not do. Do we need to do some house cleaning? Do we need to remobilize our strategies? That sort of thing. You up for that this morning?
Absolutely. Let's do this.
Well, let's begin with your initial take then. As you see it from the involvements that you have, you're involved in works in Virginia, works in North Carolina. You were part of the election last year in the Electoral College. From your perspective, what do you see as the current state of the Republican Party?
Okay. Well, if I may, I'm going to break that down into three sections. Here locally in Gates County, we have been astronomical as far as the changing of how we do business. It used to be that the narrative was that you had to be a Democrat to be part of the electoral process here in Gates County and much of the eastern North Carolina. And we were able to absolutely bring energy to the party. In 2018, we had a Republican running for every office in the county. In 2016, 100% of our precincts went Donald Trump, which was absolutely unheard of at the time. And in 2020, every Republican won in Gates County. And this goes back to in 2010, where we had a sheriff nominee who only captured 32% of the vote, and we had a county commissioner race that was only 31% of the vote. So going from that flooded gate opening to this Republican wave that's happening in the eastern section of North Carolina, specifically in Gates County, is absolutely phenomenal. So we are absolutely a player within North Carolina politics, and we're proud to be one of the 100 county parties. Now, if you're talking about the state, if I may, the state has been absolutely phenomenal under State Chairman Whatley. He has brought home in 2020 all 8 of our judge races. We had 5 appellate court races, and we had 3 Supreme Court races, and it was a clean sweep. Paul Newby's race out of over 5.5 million came down to what I believe to be was 301 votes. So at the end of the day, we claimed victory and just an astronomical move of the Republican Party on the state. Now, on the federal level, I really want to be careful on how I describe that, because there's 50 different states and they all have their different ways of doing things. But I am proud to say that North Carolina has 2 Republican senators, and I'm very proud of that.
That is encouraging to hear. The grabbing of offices, the increase, I guess, perhaps in membership in the party itself.
Yes.
If anything, at least the number of voters that have come on board with it. Having your ear to the ground, what are some of the things that made this shift happen? What is this former Democrats who've left the party? Is this just a bunch of people in the middle who shifted to one side versus the other? Is it Republicans who just were not existent for years suddenly showed up? What was the cause of this?
Well, I know for locally, our numbers have absolutely increased. And this goes to a few reasons here locally. One is that in the school system here in Gates County, it's always been led by Democrats.
Right.
And they've always told the students to absolutely go register Democrat. Didn't matter if you were Republican, Independent, or Democrat, go register Democrat.
Wow.
So now that we gave them a choice, they are absolutely coming back home to the conservative party, the Republican Party, the party of Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. And so we're seeing our numbers increase by individuals that were that was ideology connected with the party itself being conservative. Another reason is we're also seeing that Virginia Republicans, such as myself, moving into North Carolina, which is changing the demographics. As Virginia is going bluer, you're seeing these Republicans move to North Carolina, where North Carolina is becoming redder. And you're seeing this during the borders with, let's say, Granville and Gates County and Currituck County and others, where they're just turning absolutely red.
The shifting of population, though, doesn't necessarily mean an improvement for a party, does it?
No, but it certainly helps when you go from the minority in the county to a plurality.
Right.
And so if you take the independents and the Republicans, we could absolutely win local races. There's no question. And so that's exactly what we plan on doing in 2022.
But the cost is that Virginia turns more blue.
That is true. So as those individuals such as, in Virginia, typically the western portion of Virginia is always red. Northern Virginia has always been pretty blue. And Hampton Roads was your purple area. With Hampton Roads moving into North Carolina, that purple has become slightly bluer. And I would certainly point to the Chris Jones campaign, who has served at the House of Delegates in Virginia, who was recently replaced by a Democrat in 2019. So yes, it does make a big difference in Virginia, but it also helps out in North Carolina.
Yeah, moving of whole populations has affected a lot of areas, I imagine.
Absolutely.
People moving from one area with certain mentalities to another can outnumber those who've been there for a while and change the whole makeup of the political landscape.
Absolutely. That certainly can take that certainly can take place. I know in Gates County, when I first moved in, some of the derogatory comments that was made was individuals calling me a transplant. And so if you were not born in Gates County or from Gates County, they didn't want you in Gates County. And so that was one of the challenges that we had to overcome. And so I just told the local establishment, not only am I going to stay here, but we're going to buy property and build, and we're going to build a Republican headquarters. And that's exactly what we did. We absolutely bought land, built a house, and built the GOP headquarters for Gates County.
That's pretty good. I guess I'm trying to look at the bigger picture now. Shifting of populations aside,
sure.
The Republican Party as is, can it cope with the competition that we're facing?
Let me say no, and let me explain that.
Right.
When you have, and again, this goes back to shifting population. When you have an open border, such as with the Mexico and Texas, Arizona border and all those, you have these immigrants that's coming in. And I have no problem with immigrants. I have a problem with illegal immigrants coming into our country illegally and receiving services that are rendered that they're not paying for. Okay, this is my problem. And with that, you're going to see the Electoral College shift because it's based off of population. There is a reason why they are not releasing the data until September-ish time period. Every 10 years, we go through a decennial census, and those numbers are not being released. Why? Well, you have an open border with Mexico, and I believe that the Biden campaign and the Biden administration is going to try and fix those numbers, and they're placing these individuals throughout our country in different states. So this is a problem. And how can the Republican Party win fairly on fair elections when these individuals on the Democratic side and your socialist Democrats are breaking the rules? And so how can we win a game where the rules are constantly changing? So it is a challenge for us. And we have to shut down the borders, just like what Trump did with the wall. We absolutely need our protection.
Is it legal to count someone here illegally as part of the population for the Electoral College?
Well, as it is you do not have to be see, here's the situation. You do not have to be a United States citizen to be counted in the census. So that is where the states get their representation, is that by the number of population within that particular state. And so, no, the answer is no. Now, the Democrats are saying that that the immigrants that's coming into the country should be able to vote. Okay. Now, how the Constitution is broken down is that you must be a United States citizen to vote in the federal elections. The problem is the state and the local elections. And so this is where you see in the big cities where we're starting to get hammered.
So they're allowing people who are not citizens to vote in these elections.
There has been times and circumstances where individuals that, yes, they have absolutely voted in elections. Yes.
That baffles my mind, man. I mean,
Yes, sir.
on a most basic level, that's like me going to France and casting a vote.
Yes.
And never have been there before and say, you know what, I don't like what you do here. I'm going to vote against it. But I'm not French.
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
now if I went through the process to become French, then sure, right? But I can't just show up and say, hey, I demand a right to vote, and you know what, I'm changing everything. That's just ridiculous.
Well, when I was watching the news and I'm seeing immigrants come over across the border with Biden T-shirts that say "Let us in."
Right.
Those very nice, graphed T-shirts, very meticulously made. That was not by accident. The Democratic Party does these things, and they do it by design. There's no question.
Oh, I have no doubt about that. These things are orchestrated. It's plainly obvious. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to look at it and go, that looks obviously organized.
Exactly. Exactly.
I don't have to sniff around for behind the scenes evidence. It's self-evident. You look at it. Yep, that's organized. Absolutely.
Yeah, no question. No question.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's some sinister tactics. I guess my deeper question would be, we as a party, the Republican Party, are we organized to fight these sort of things? And can we quit being on the defensive and actually go on the offensive for once?
Wow. Well, that is certainly my tactics. I believe that the best defense is an absolute phenomenal offense. When I took office as the first congressional district chair back in 2017, the very first thing I wanted to do was I wanted to take a look at the local elections within the first congressional district of North Carolina. And during that year, the very first thing that we looked at was localities. We were able to flip the mayorship in Pitt County, Greenville. We were able to flip the mayorship in Granville County, STEM, along with grabbing other offices such as town council and town commissioners. So we absolutely went on the offense. And just a year later, in 2018, we were able to capture several judge races within those blue counties, such as Warren and Vance and elsewhere. We were able to flip the Superior Court judges, where it used to be 100% Democrat, and now they're 100% Republican. So we absolutely went after them, and we won in those races, as well as playing defense with, let's say, House 1, House 2, and Senate 1, and others.
Right. Well, and again, that's one of the things that made you appeal to me when I first met you, is this spirit of go get it.
Yes.
Which I believe personally, our current state of the party at large doesn't have that attitude. It's just kind of, we're, as a party, we are content to say, well, complain, but that's where it ends. Just complain, and then let things happen and complain some more, and we watch it happen. It's almost like we did it to ourselves.
Well, no, I do agree that there are some self-inflicting wounds. And if I may, I'm going to take you to a race that I personally witnessed. And as the congressional district chair, I looked in Wilson County, for instance. They had a House seat where we Republicans, we only lost by less than 1%. I think, if I remember correctly, it was 0.79 of a percentage mark. It was that close. And so as I'm aggressively going after these seats, saying, yes, we could take these on, And if I may say, it's Butterfield's estranged wife who holds that seat at the Democratic state level. And so,
Okay.
when we wanted to go after that seat, there were some that said, "It's just not winnable." So there are those individuals out there that I would like to see more aggressive. But no, absolutely, I'm taking a look at every race in North Carolina. If I could go there and flip it, I will. I think that flipping is way more important than winning.
Well, I mean, every little ground we gain is important.
Yes.
And I think it's important for the mindset of the conservatives in the country that are kind of stuck with, if they can see that we can actually gain these positions, maybe that'll mobilize them.
Well, I would like to think so. Like I said earlier, with State Chairman Watley, he was able to facilitate a 100% win for our state judges. I mean, you look at times past, such as with Barbara Jackson and with Justice Edmonds, we lost those races. And so
Yeah.
now that State Chairman Watley has come onto the scene, we now get a full sweep of all 8 judges at once. Just
Right.
phenomenal, absolutely
Well,
phenomenal.
absolutely. And that's great news of victory. But are you aware of what what in the world happened in North Carolina with the governor's race? Because I mean, we got the lieutenant governor, but not the governor. How in the world does that happen?
Right. Well, for me, it's actually 2 things. Within my own poll, I went ahead and I went to the first district, and I told them that in the summertime in 2020, I said, "Look, guys, we're looking at an extremely tight race. We have Dan Forrest at 47%. We have Roy Cooper at 48% with a 5% that's rather A, not talking, or B, undecided. So we're
Right.
going to have to carry a majority of that 5% that's left over." There were other polls out there that was similar in numbers and information. But what truly happened was the Democrats absolutely took over this narrative with COVID. Okay. Now, I am a individual that likes to be respectful to my elders and to authority. Okay.
Right.
But I'm not going to be respectful at at the same time of losing my rights or my duties within my own household. And so the whole mask issue came out, and I did wear one out of respect. But when it became an issue of politics and not safety, which is what this mask mandate is, that posed a massive problem. And so Roy Cooper took that and he rode it all the way in, which I believe the Democrats will try in Virginia, is with this mask mandate.
Right. Right.
So that was the problem. Was Roy Cooper absolutely took a problem and he ran with it. And if you remember Rahm Emanuel from Chicago, he said, "Never let a good crisis go to waste."
But was this not a dual opportunity crisis, though? Could Dan Forrest have used that very thing as a counterpunch?
I think that some of us within the party were trying to decide what the right move was. And for me,
Right.
it was very clear when the local sheriff's department here in Gates County was called on for a lady not wearing a mask for one of our recounts. It was clear to me that day, the light bulb went off, and I absolutely saw what the Democrats were doing. And I said, if you arrest her, him, or them, you will
Mhm.
have to arrest all of us. We're all taking our masks off. And it was a local movement that just shifted, that we're just done. And so until the party as a whole, whoever those individuals may be, until they
Right.
get to that point, it was a very difficult moment. We never had anything like this in our recent history. You would
Sure.
have to go back to to the early 1900s and even back to the bubonic plague to look at examples.
Right. Well, definitely. I think what you brought up is another one of the things I'd want to like delve in here. Um, Unity
Yes.
within the party. There doesn't seem to be an overarching strategy, goal, purpose, mobilizing the party as a whole to accomplish something. Uh, I mean, it happens here at a local level, there at a local level, great victories, but then overall, we seem kind of fractured in a way, don't we?
I know that when it comes to the party, I know for me, you hit it on the head of the nail there earlier when you said that you have energy, you go out there and you fight,
Right.
and I am a very aggressive person. Okay, when I
Hmm.
see something that is obtainable, rather it be a goal in mind, or rather it be a race that I'm looking at, or whatever the end goal is, I go after it aggressively. And so perhaps my tactics as an aggressive statesman may turn some off, perhaps. Or
Yeah.
maybe they can't see the value of absolutely going after. I don't do business as usual. I tend to, throw the box down the road. I don't even think outside the box. I just kick the box down the road and come up with new stuff, right? So what works, you keep doing it. What doesn't work, throw it away and start over. So I think that for me
Right.
personally, my tactics are so aggressive that it may turn some that are more passive off. And so it's a difference of passion and aggression as to, let's say, passive and um, perhaps a more methodical way of doing business.
The term you use, I think, highlights maybe what I'm trying to say, that the business as usual approach.
Yeah, I'm done with
Right.
business as usual.
There's
There's no question.
right. Yeah. Well, me personally, I think so. I honestly believe a large, massive amount of conservatives are fed up with business as usual,
Yes.
and we want to start taking some gloves off because
Yes.
we've been given rules to follow and observe that the opposition simply is not going to do, and we're always fighting at a disadvantage,
Yes.
and we inflict it on ourselves.
The, I will absolutely agree that there are times where there are self-inflicting wounds, and that there are times that we do it to ourselves. There's no question. I do
Yeah.
know that there are several races that I have worked on in times past. I've been in politics. I'm 42, but I've been in politics for about 25 years now. I
Right.
have seen races where something has been said or something has been done, and it was self-inflicting wound, and it was their race to lose, and so they did.
Yeah.
There's no question. And of course, you see that in politics. And
All the
it's not
time. Yeah.
specifically, yeah, not in specific one
Right.
party, but certainly in politics. That's clear.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Sure. Uh, Not particularly a race itself, but I mean, operational philosophy. Maybe that maybe we can roll with that.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
the way conservatives, in my opinion, have approached things has put us in the corner from the beginning,
Yes,
and we
yes,
let the narrative be written for us. We don't counter the narrative very effectively. We,
yes.
it's like our strategy is just when it's time to vote. Hopefully, we'll show up and vote and change things, but that don't even do it half the time.
Well, okay. So in Gates County, we had a situation where it was a matter of COVID, right? And we knew for a fact that the Democrats were using it to their advantage, whether it be the
Right.
local, state, or federal Democrats. The narrative was the same, the tactics was the same. You can't fool me. I've seen the tactics over and over again.
Right.
And so that was just, it was clear as day. They showed me their own roadmap for years. And so now when I use their own tactics against them, they want to call foul play. Here
Right.
specifically is what I'm speaking about. We used to absolutely take Xerox copies of sample ballots. We would bubble in all the Republicans and we would pass it out. We have our precinct captains that pass them out here locally. And so for every year, they expected us to do the same things. Well, I changed tactics every 2 years. And so in 2020, with COVID going around, we decided not to pass out sample ballots at the polls. We decided to actually go and be observers. And the state law says that I'm allowed to have 10 observers for the county plus two
Hmm.
observers per precinct. Okay. And then, of course, the campaigns are also allowed to deputize observers for the polls as well. The Board of Elections here locally, and I have it on audio, where they specifically said we were not allowed to do that. And I said, "Oh, yes, I am." The problem with us conservatives is we trust where we try to comply with laws and rules and regulations, and we have a level of trust with our government. So when government does something wrong, we do not know as a whole on how to deal with that. So the very first
Hmm.
thing I did was to contact our state lawyer, and I said, "Look, they're saying we're not allowed to do it. It says here in the state statute that we are. would you be as so kind as to write a letter? He said, Tom, I'm already on it. We got this. And so by the next day, the local board of elections was able to receive that letter, and everyone that I deputized as observers was at the polls watching everything go down.
Right. And
Absolutely.
That's good stuff. I mean, I think that's how it should be. I think you're right in saying that we have a level of trust in systems.
Yes.
So when it doesn't work the way it's supposed to, it's like we're frozen.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what happened. Yes.
Right. Whereas I think the opposition can care less about the system other than how can I use it to my benefit?
How can I win? Exactly.
Get rid of it. How can I go around it if it's a problem?
Yes.
To them, they don't care. And that's something that's kind of hard to fight with.
Yes, exactly. And I think that conservatives, we have such a love for our country. We have such a love for our laws. We have such a love for our freedoms that we do trust our government to represent us. What do we do when they no longer represent us or represent our values? That is a problem that we need to overcome as a whole. And so here locally and within the congressional district, and I'm doing my best, of course, to put it not only in the whole state of North Carolina, but also in Virginia, there are things that we can do. First off, you change tactics. Keep the Democrats on their toes. Second off, always be honest. If it's not something that you don't like, be honest about it, own up to it, move on. And when it comes to government, even the founding fathers knew that ambition counteracts ambition. And even in the Bible, it says that iron sharpens iron. So we have to be able to counteract what government does. And remember, we don't work for them. They work for us. And if they're not working for us, they can be replaced. And we have done that in times past. Absolutely. It's called primaries.
You're listening to Rage of the Age. Rage of the Age. Politics, religion, economics, and history with a conservative bend.
Well, right. Primaries. Yeah. Primaries are interesting. Now, primaries, you mean where we elect our party officials, right?
Well, that would be inter-party apparatus elections, which is in the odd number of years in North Carolina. That's exactly what we do. Are they doing a good job? And if not, kick the bums out. Get new blood. Get fresh blood. In Gates County, I have absolutely done this. My secondary vice chair is in his early 20s, and my intern is 19. So I absolutely go after new, fresh blood because they come up with new ideas. You find that this generation nowadays, they may not know the true history of our country, but they have passion. And so you can take that passion and teach somebody who is teachable. You can't do nothing with somebody that's just not teachable or has already molded their ideology. The Democrats are playing the long game, and here we are playing election per election.
Well, there you go. That's a great way to put it. They play the long game.
Yes.
And we go from election to election, hoping to win it with no clue of what we're going to do with it half the time.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like a dog that's running after the car. He finally bit the tire. Now, what do you do with it?
Right. And it's like, now what? Now what? I got the tire.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I got it. Now, what do I do with it? Right. So, absolutely.
Exactly. Well, I mean, you're talking about young blood, which is absolutely vital for all institutions, I think, but we need also honest blood.
Yes.
we need honest, like, are you really a conservative or are you just pulling our chain? I mean, like the recent event in Arkansas absolutely baffles me where that governor vetoed the legislation with chemical castration of, youth. But he refused to sign it. And he said, what is that about? Absolutely horrendous.
Wow. Well, I try very diligently to stay out of other states' politics. And of course, this may even sound hypocritical because here I am involved in the Virginia state politics, right?
Sure.
But I do have a vested interest within Virginia politics because I have seen it go from red to blue. Let's face it, for 44 years, the Virginia has gone Republican. And on the 48th, it went to Barack Obama. And the same thing that happened in Indiana. And then, of course, in North Carolina, it was Republican for 24 years before it went to Barack Obama. So you see these changes, and it's all I could do just to play in my sandbox. I tell you, it is just astronomical as to some of the things I've seen and heard, even with Liz Cheney and others voting against the president, and so meaning President Trump 45. And so if I could just keep my own sandbox afloat, I'm doing something. So
Yeah. Well, and absolutely, we have to tend to what is put into our hands.
sure,
But I guess I'm addressing the idea of party unity.
yeah.
Overall, it's like we can't even trust our own. We can't trust that they'll fulfill their. It's like there's no there's no moral drive really. We have it kinda, but when I look at the Democrats, they have a very strict morality, if I can say it this way, of what they're going to do. And almost to the person. There's a very few who deviate. Sometimes they're on board with it. It's almost like we don't have something like that.
Well, I think that the Democratic Party has been, I think they have been conditioned. I think that's the right word
Yeah.
I need to use. I think they've been conditioned. And so when one person who does rise to the top within their political apparatus and they say, let's do this, they all fall in line to do whatever this is.
Mm-hmm.
With the Republican Party, here's the big difference. The big difference is that you have a party full of leaders. And so if let's say you say, Tom, we're going to take the hill, and I say, no, I think it's better that we dig underneath the hill. And I think that's the best way of doing that. And you can even see this within the tactics of President Grant when he was a general. He said, no, we're not going to take the hill. We're going to dig underneath and plant TNT in there, and we're going to explode it. And so right, wrong, or indifferent, the Democratic Party has a party full of followers. You can absolutely statistically look at who voted for Biden, because if you're in a car by yourself wearing a mask, statistically speaking, you voted for Biden. Those individuals that's for Trump, you could see them taking the masks off. They're done with big government. And it goes back to what Ronald Reagan said. I'm from the government. I'm here to help. So you could see those that actually accept it as is and those that question. So I think you have a party full of followers versus a party full of leaders. And not everybody can be a chief, and not everybody should be an Indian, right? Like, we need a little bit of both, right? And even in the Bible, it says that if you are the servant of all, you are the greatest among. So I try, even within my spiritual life as well as my political life, to always serve. If I'm a good server, later on I will become a good leader, where he is given some talents. Those that took those talents and did something with them, he gave them more. And so I want to be increasing every day, not only in my spiritual walk, but also in my political walk. Absolutely. So that is the difference, followers versus leaders.
There's definitely that difference, I believe. Absolutely. But to pick at your analogy a little bit of taking the hill is still the objective, right? Whether you do a direct assault on it or you undermine it with mining, in the end, that position's what you get, the hill, right? But it's almost like we as a party look at the hill and go, we should take it. And the other one's like, well, I don't know, we might offend somebody, or well, I don't know if we should take it like that. It might look bad. I mean, it's like we hamstring ourselves on the decision of do we want the hill or not.
Well, sure. And my tactic has always been to be absolutely truthful, even to a fault. If I offend you and I'm telling you the truth, I have nothing to apologize later other than to say, hey, I told you the absolute truth. Now, if I'm being rude about it, that's a different story, right? But if I'm being polite about it and I'm telling you the absolute truth and you're offended by that, no offense, but I don't care. So I'm walking away with a clear conscience, knowing that I have told you the truth. And so I think I think that in this day and time of the woke movement, we're too busy with people's feelings and not enough about their rights, their liberties, their responsibilities. With rights comes responsibilities. Where he has given much, much is required.
How about the soul of the party? I mean, what is it that we stand for? What could we say that we stand for? And I asked this with this context in mind. One big example is in the past year, I've seen a huge number of LGBT come out and support the conservative side.
Yes.
And they were like almost instantly embraced for who they are simply because they wanted to vote against Democrats. And I'm thinking that's never been a thing for our party to endorse. Right. So it's almost like we've legitimized something that we didn't want to legitimize simply to get the vote. Do we have a soul?
We do have a soul. And if I may, I think you raise a good point. And I absolutely, I'm an Acts 2:38 Christian. I really am. I believe that there are biblical convictions where we have to toe the line and we have to call what is wrong wrong. Okay. And so we all know what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah. We all know what sin is. We all know what the Bible preaches to a degree. And so you're absolutely right. There are sin out there in the world. But if I may remind you that we live in two different cities. You see, God told us to tarry, right? To wait for his coming. And so we have to hold our household to those to the spiritual good graces of God. However, we live in a realm of politics, and although I'm not endorsing selling our soul, nor is that what we have done. What we have done is that we have the power in this country to stand up for rights. You see, we have a problem with the fight with freedom from versus freedom to. If I legalize something, it's not for just one person, it's for all. So let me describe it this way. I did not want to support going to the courts about gay marriage. We have seen it time and time again where the conservatives go out and we fight. In the 80s, you had the religious right that came out and absolutely fought for Ronald Reagan. And it has been said by some, if they did not, Ronald Reagan would have lost by 1% of the vote. But I think he still would have carried the Electoral College, but that's neither here nor there. If we start legalizing morality, that legalization is going to come back to bite us every time. Let me give you two scenarios. One, with the religious right in the 80s, it had come back to bite us in the 90s with this gay movement under Bill Clinton. I don't think that morality should be legalized at all, because when you get into that, that poses a problem, because our laws are set up that it doesn't affect one, it affects all. The next scenario I would have to bring up is right here in North Carolina, the HB2, okay? I want you to know that I was absolutely against HB2 from the absolute get-go. In Gates County, we had a particular meeting where unanimously, even my wife voted endorsing and supporting for HB2, okay? I looked at the room and I said, as chair, I do not have a vote, but I'm warning everyone that this is bad. You cannot legalize morality. If you do, you're getting into the weeds and it will come back to bite us. Well, it absolutely did. The state legislators, they pulled it off. They gave us a watered down version, and to a degree, the left still won because, well, we got Roy Cooper in 2016. And so that was an absolute problem. So when it comes to legalizing morality, I'm not in favor of it. I think that if we kept it with the John Locke morality, where government should be doing a certain thing, if they can't do it, they need to be replaced. I don't care about someone's sexuality. That's not who I am, because if I fight to have this taken away, this gay movement taken away, if I even try to legislate morality, what stops the government from legalizing or illegalizing my bedroom? See, in Virginia, there's a state law that says that unless you have missionary style, your sex is wrong. At one time, it was on the books, and so that only missionary style was legalized. I don't want government in my bedroom. And so, I think a good scripture comes to mind where it says that seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these other things will be added unto you. I think that our walk is an individual thing. I can lead you to Christ, but I can't make you partake in his writings or his teachings. And so I try not to bring that into government. I bring in the teachings, but I don't force that. I don't try to force a circular into a square hole. It just doesn't work.
But I don't know if philosophically speaking, that's a defendable position in the end because every law legislates morality to some degree. I mean, we have laws that say don't murder. That's a morality, right? I mean, there's certain things that you can't rape. That's a morality. That we have laws that regulate morality. We can't say that we don't. There are laws that exist that both sides would agree that should exist because they think it's a morally correct position to have. I think in this degree, they're going to use that position to instruct the morality to us. And we're seeing it through the teachers' unions and in schools where they're teaching our children that this is a correct morality.
When it came to fighting the left on morality, I think that there is a difference between biblical conviction and a personal conviction. Okay? With a biblical conviction, we absolutely know that murder is absolutely wrong. And so, yes, there's a form of justice that needs to take place. But if I try to legalize my personal conviction, let me give you one scenario. I remember a gentleman in church one time that said that, thank God I haven't drank Coca-Cola for 30 years. And I'm thinking to myself, what does it have to do with your walk? You see, I don't want to legalize an issue within our government unless it has to do with the betterment of the country. You start legalizing or legitimizing a form of sex, then that poses a problem. Where
the sex part is not what bothers me, or probably most. It's like if that's what you want to do it. But when you seek the sanction of the state that endorses it, that's where I have an issue. Where you put it on an equal par with marriage, which has never been what marriage is ever.
Right.
That and then you're going to force that narrative. The only people who have been against that have been the conservatives in the Republican Party. But it's almost like now we will be eroded in that defense by embracing a lifestyle that we've never endorsed in the first place.
No, I would never. When I say sex, I'm not talking about the action as a verb. I'm using it as an adjective. When the left is coming up with shem and zem and z's and all these other pronouns to describe sexuality. If you have a penis, you're a male. If you have a vagina, you're a female. And so if we start legalizing what those terms are, we're going to go into the weeds. Such as, let me give you one example. In one of the northeastern states, the state legislators came out from the Democratic Party and said, we need to define the sexual orientation or identification of these individuals. And thankfully, a Republican actually stood up and said, okay, I want all of them described. And so when the Democrats got very confused with this ambiguous amount of names and descriptions, they finally backed off of that state legislation. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, no, you can hate the sin, but love the sinner. And I think the Republican Party is inclusive enough to accept those individuals without accepting their personal lifestyle. Yeah. And so, that's just where I am as a leader within our party. I do not endorse homosexuality. I do not endorse having these cross-dressers teach or read to our kids. Of course, this is not something that I endorse. But to welcome those individuals to our party, I can welcome them without welcoming their ideology. And so that is personally where I'm at. And I think that's where the separation between church and state is with me. I do not want government regulating my bedroom, nor do I want laws to regulate, because when you do that, when you start regulating morality, that's when it poses to be a problem. And we have absolutely seen that counteract with us back in the 90s, counteracting what the religious right was doing in the 80s. And so that poses a problem. Less government is the answer. Absolutely, less government is the answer. We live in a world of Machiavelli. There's no reason to give them more power.
Well, yeah, I don't like the idea of giving a bunch of power to Machiavellians, for sure.
Exactly.
But it's just that issue can spin in so many things. So, I mean, can I have 4 wives now? Can I? I mean, there's so much which can overburden a social system of welfare.
Right.
I mean, because now I have a million kids with all these women, and I'm going to have the state pay for. There's so many issues tied to this, but it's not a matter of the morality per se. It's just that, say someone leaves the Democratic Party but has a strong union line. I want to endorse unions and get more unions in workplaces, whereas conservatives tend to shy away from that. But at a point, because they're with us, it's almost like we're endorsing it. And now they have a voice in the party advocating for something that normally we would fight against. I guess maybe what I'm trying to say is can we not just have those unifying factors? This is what we're fighting for. This is what unifies us. This is what defines us versus the opposition. I don't know if I'm seeing that as clearly as I would like to, perhaps. Fiscal responsibility is another one. The size of government, like you were saying, is another one. We have a whole spectrum of, I want more government, I want less government. We have those who want to just spend and don't care, and some who want to tighten up the reins. We cheapen it with tax cuts, but because we don't cut spending, we're really not tax cutting. We're increasing our debt. We didn't fix nothing. Either way, we're refusing to attack the budget. There's a lot of things that we as a party just seem to float around, and we just won't put our teeth in anything. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. So one thing comes to mind is the No Child Left Behind. Okay,
Yeah.
This was done under the Bush administration, where he reached out to Ted Kennedy, and they together came up with this idea, with, of course, other lawmakers being in the process.
Yeah.
It was bad. It was bad legislation. It was a bad choice. It
so.
was, you could see where Bush was trying to reach across the aisle to get a consensus within the country to come up with that non-polarizing issue. However, it was bad. It was bad, and so that has bit us in the rear. Is that equilibrium? Where is that? Where is it that we draw the line to say we're not moving an inch further, as opposed to we need to cross the aisle and work with what we can with where we. And at the end of the day, man is a political machine. Okay. Even myself, I'm going to speak on myself. Even I look to how to get reelected as the chair of Gates County Republican Party, or the first congressional district Republican Party. And so the first time I was elected, it was not with the plurality or majority of the vote. I had a very small percentage of the raw vote, but by the weighted voting, I captured over 55%. And so in my second time, in 19, when I was reelected, I captured approximately 80% of the vote, which was 85% of the weighted vote, because we do weighted vote for our district and state chairmanship. And so, yes, man is a political machine that looks to be reelected, and how do we best do that? And so I understand what his tactics was, trying to reach across the aisle to get a consensus, because he did have a very contentious race in 2000 with the courts. But at the same time, we need to be careful as to not negotiate, our principles right down the toilet.
Right.
And that in itself is a balancing act. How do I love the sinner and hate the sin? So, whether it be in church or whether it be in our government, how do we accept the individual without accepting their lifestyle? And I think for the one word within the Republican Party, the one word that comes to mind is liberty. If you like your 13th, 14th, or 15th Amendment, thank a Republican. It was because of Abraham Lincoln that started the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st of 1863 that freed the slaves. Well, then those slaves became citizens, and those citizens became members of Congress. And so the first congressman was a black Republican. And so, we tend to these days forget where we have come from. But if I can describe the Republican Party with one word, it's liberty. Even Ronald Reagan, being the author and the finisher of the 11th Amendment, never speak anything bad about a Republican. We all fight for liberty itself. I think we have different tactics, but at the same time, it's all about liberty. It's all about the freedoms. If I regulate what's in your bedroom, or if I regulate what's in your life, you have the same power to regulate mine. If I regulate your scripture, you can regulate mine. And I fear that we're coming to a day where the right is going to try and regulate the left, and the left is going to try and regulate the right, and this perpetual swing will swing for each president that comes into office and the power of the party that goes into Congress. So I am fearful of regulating morality, and so that's just bad juju. I warn everybody against it. Don't do it, and that polarizes the country horrifically. But you did mention one thing that I absolutely agree with. You cannot keep spending going into, where are we at, over $20 trillion in deficit and get away with it. And China owns about $1 trillion of that. They're buying up, the local businesses within America. Even the ship packing plant over there in Isle of Wight is now ran by a Chinese chairman of the board. And so this is a problem. You cannot keep spending. So we're spending to a point where we're going to need another bailout, right? Where does the bailouts end? I am not a Keynesian model type of guy. Let the companies fall where they fall, and I'm an F.A. Hayek type of guy, right? So I believe in free market and fair markets, and I think Trump got it right.
Well, I think that's one of the things that made Trump appealing in so many ways is he believed in America first. He was a fighter, which we have been craving for a long time. Someone to actually not just take it, but to fight to gain what we want. He had a way of mobilizing everyone behind the American banner, which we still need that. Now, how we go forward that direction, of course, is going to be a mess.
Sure.
Absolutely. And, but we have to start on solid principle, I think. And we have to be unified. We have to have a spirit of let's roll up our sleeves and get it done. The business as usual, I'm convinced, is just not going to cut it no more. We have to get our head in the game.
Well, there's absolutely wisdom to that. You cannot keep doing what we've always done because we're going to get the same results as we've always got. If you look at, once again, the demographics of America, they're changing. And it's not because of the inter-party or inter-country issues. We're now having individuals that's coming in illegally that will absolutely change. My fear is that if you bring in enough individuals that want government and is used to socialism or even communism in some cases, if you have these individuals come into our country, where does it end? Does the Republican Party stand up and say, no, this cannot be? Or do we suffer losses going on in the future 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now? What do we do? And so the idea is that got to build the wall. You got to have security. And there has to be freedoms that take place. I believe in constitutional carry. I believe in my silent five. I believe in the personal liberties within the 9th Amendment. I believe in the state rights in the 10th, and I believe in the federal rights of the 14th. And so this is just where I'm at with it.
Thomas, it's been awesome talking with you today. I really appreciate your insight.
Absolutely. No, I certainly appreciate the opportunity. I know that politics is murky at best at times, and if we could just sift through it and find our way, we're doing something, So I appreciate your time with me and allowing me to speak to your listeners. And what a great honor it was for me, and I just appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much. Very humbling.
You're listening to Rage of the Age. Rage of the Age. Politics, religion, economics, and history with a conservative bend.
Welcome to the essay segment. It was a joy again to speak with Thomas Hill regarding the party and what we look like now, what we have coming up to go against, things we need to do in order to accomplish our goals. I like his approach. Like I said, aggressive, get it done type of mentality. I think the party needs it. In this essay, I want to talk a little bit more about these ideas, extend them some. I mainly just want to focus on this idea of unity, the apparent lack of it. Now, I agree in many ways that he says that we are a party of leaders, not followers. And I definitely don't want the Borg-like mentality to be the guiding principle of the party. Absolutely not. But what we need, nonetheless, is these achievable goals that we can unite behind in order to propel us in a direction to accomplish something. Right now, what I see that we have binding people together with the Republican Party is we're not the Democrats. We're just straight up playing, we're not them, vote for us, and we have nothing to offer. And the slightest chance of tension being removed from the situation means those temporary allies are going to leave. We have nothing mobilizing us as a force to actually go forth and take a hold of something. And even if we get power, we don't know what to do with it. I mean, case in point, when Trump was elected in 2016, and one of the things he pushed for was the repealing of Obamacare. Yet we had Republicans refuse to get on board and do that. We choked at the moment that we had the power to actually accomplish something. And it's a little frustrating that when you see your side finally win, when a lot of times it doesn't, and more about that in a second, when they have the opportunity to actually step into the breach and accomplish something that you hope that you elected them to do when you put them there, and then they choke, it really infuriates at least me. But I know I'm not alone in this matter. I'm absolutely frustrated that I belong to a party of people who say one thing and say what the voters want to hear, but when they get in a position to actually get it done, they don't do it. They make excuses, they do some tap dancing, and they're revealed for what they really are. But then we've wasted time and campaigning and funds to put that person in that position just for them not to deliver what they said. And that is absolutely infuriating to me. But then again, we only exist just to say no. We'd be the party of no. That's what we're known for, right? There's definitely some things to say no to, absolutely. But we're not a party of let's get this done. We hope to block and delay something, which we let the opposition to continue agitating for things until they just eventually get it. And we're standing here frustrated. And that is not the way to do business. Business as usual is failing us, and it needs to change. I think back to earlier days. I want to, for those of you who are around my age frame, from my generation and older, you know what I'm talking about. For those of you who are younger, look this up, what I'm talking about, and put this into perspective. And I think this is some of the things that we need to look back on, learn those lessons, and apply them now to our own day. I want to talk about what's known as by some as the contract with America. Other people have called this the Republican Revolution. I want to highlight what took place around this time. This is like 1993, 94 time frame. Bill Clinton was the president, unfortunately. But what had been, the thing you have to notice or understand is that for 40 years, the Democrats had run the House of Representatives, right? That they held it for 4 decades, literally. And if you actually, that's because there was like a break in there once. But if you look at the whole span of like from 1933 on up to 1994, 93, 94 time frame, the Democrats had held the House of Representatives that entire time. And yet the Democrats today want to blame America for all of its problems. When they had most of the realms of power in their fist to do something about it. So this whole shifting of blame, first of all, is ridiculous. If you look at the Senate within that 40-year span, that was interrupted for a brief time for about 6 years. Other than that, the Democrats controlled the Senate. But again, if you put it into the longer considerations from the 30s onward, it's a similar thing. You might have had a break here and there, but overwhelmingly, the Democrats had run the Congress for a very, very long time. So when you hear them, first of all, whining about how racist America is or how bad economic conditions are or whatever other crisis they want to foam at the mouth over to get you all agitated to take to the streets or something. Just realize that they are the ones at the realms of the power for far longer than anybody else in order to write the legislations for this country. Just think about that. But that aside, what happened is this idea was created called the Contract with America. Back in the day, that was spearheaded by Newt Gingrich. Of course, he had help by other people. Nothing's ever done alone. It's a team effort. But he definitely helped spearhead it. And basically, there was a series of acts that was promised by all that if you vote us in, these are what we are going to fight for and pass. And that was part of the campaign. Towards the end of the campaign, this came out that, look, if you, they put their names down. Look, this is what we're going to support if you vote us in. And so they got put in based on that premise. For decades, the Democrats controlled the Congress. Well, that changed, right? The House of Representatives absolutely changed. And they started to go to work to push forth this legislation. Some of it was shot down by Bill Clinton simply because Republicans passed it. Some of it was vetoed, but they came back again with 2/3 in order to pass it through to override his veto. Some of it was taken to court, and such as the line item veto, and it was ruled as unconstitutional. But the thing is they actually did what they said. They went together with an overarching strategy, and as a national party said, if you put us in these positions, this is what we will fight for. And they did it. I don't trust the Republican Party at this very second to do that. There's going to be those who are going to dissent, not support it. They're going to do whatever, their own little thing. I don't know why they're in the party other than they thought they could get elected by running on the coattails of Trump. That's about it. But what we don't need one man to be the face of the party. We need principle. We need a soul. We need objectives, hills, like Mr. Hill and myself were talking about, to go after. There are things we must say that we as a party, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're for. You back us. This is what we are going to do. In unity, arm in arm, shield next to your shield, side by side, we will be in this fight to do it for this cause. But what causes do we have? I mean, under Trump, it's kind of come out again. But what bothers me about that outburst, first off, there's a lot of goodness to it. But one of the downfalls is we've waited for one person, one man, to do all that. And now that he's out of the picture, we act like we're clueless. Now, if we're supposed to be a party of leaders, now's the time for these leaders to step up. All right? We have to have a concerted strategy as a party that everyone has to get behind, or we're going to get our clocks clean. It doesn't matter what the righteousness of our cause is. It doesn't matter how straight we play by the rules, because we know we're going against a party who won't. They're going to cheat at every turn. This is obvious. They've been caught in it. Cases are being prosecuted now for voter fraud and other issues, things that, again, our party is silent about. We need to pick what we're willing to fight for as a unified party and get out there and fight. Fight to the death if you have to. But this is ridiculous, the way we are doing business as usual. This business as usual has to end. What are some of the things that can unite us as a party that we need to push forward to? Now, I know a lot of it is negative. The Democrats are trying to do this, and this, and we don't want it. Got it. That's a motivator. Absolutely agree. But you know what? What are you doing to cut their legs from under them? What do we have concerted strategies to steal the wind out of their sails? What are we doing to offer that's a positive advancement in order to shut them down? All right? Like, in my mind right now, due to the shenanigans of the past election, there should be a huge Republican move to clean up and have fair elections. Fair, monitored elections. But it's almost like we're embarrassed to mention it because someone might use the word racist. Well, newsflash, anything you do, Mr. Republican, Mrs. Republican, they're going to call you racist anyway. Get over it. Stand up and do what you got to do. That the election went off as crazy as it did should be a huge issue. All the cases of voter fraud that have been going on that the lower member parties are aware of, surely our representatives are aware of, there should be a huge block of one Republican voice screaming at the outrage that this opposition party is comfortable in not only conducting the cheating, but condoning it. And acting like it's okay and passing measures to make it easy to cheat. They've been going at this all along. And don't be surprised when they change the narrative to we're trying to suppress votes. Counter the narrative. Take the initiative. Go on the advance. Call them the cheaters they are to their face. Break it up. Give the examples. This is why we need to regulate our elections, because these people will cheat and lie and steal, and you need to sell it. But we don't. Do we even want to fight anymore? We want to scream about we want to protect our liberties, but we're not willing to actually try to do that? Why have we not gone after these masks? Why have we not defended the churches in this land who have been persecuted and specifically targeted by a godless left? Why in the world have we been content to watch parts of the country be shut down and have economies ruined on information we aren't even sure about? We've watched overhanded government action and done nothing about it. I can't say nothing. That's a misnomer. I misspoke there. I'm sorry. I'm getting a little passionate here somewhat. But I do want to maintain my logos here. For example, efforts to recall Governor Newsom from California is much to be commended. Again, I'm speaking from the concept of a national unified Republican Party, which is something that seems to be absolutely lacking. Good for those who are fighting where you're at, fighting the good fight. But you know what? I bet you feel alone. I bet you feel like the party's not backing you. I bet you feel like it's every man for himself. And, you know, if you succeed, the Republican Party will definitely come in and say, hey, great job. The party's doing this. But if you fail, they're not going to care less, and they're not going to help you. We need strategy and intention. We need to come up with very bold plans and carry them out. We need to think outside the box, kick the box down the road. We need to see what the enemy's doing and think 2 moves ahead of them. We have to understand that this is not just an election here, an election there. We're fighting for the soul of this country. And we know that. And let me close out with this observation. All right, there was a talk at one time that President Trump might start a Patriot Party, a third party, and separate from the Republicans, because of a lot of the frustration that I'm expressing now. Now, I wasn't sure about the good or bad of that at the time, but just what caught my attention was this. All right, a vast percentage of people who were Republicans were okay with it. All right, if my memory serves me right, which may not, something to the tune of like 79% or something in the poll. All right. A very huge, scary number said they were willing to form another party because they are fed up with the Republican Party. Now, these are people who are not just going to sell out and go join the Democrats. They're willing to fight the Democrats, but they feel chained to a party that forgot that that's why they exist, to protect liberty, to preserve the American way of life, to protect the Constitution of the United States. For starters, we can start there, but we feel shackled to a party that exists in name, that's filled with certain people that are just kind of there. Maybe a lot of us want you gone. Maybe we think the Republican Party needs a remodel, a makeover. We're not asking for drastic measures. We're just asking for measures to be taken. We want representatives who feel like the vast number of your base and actually gets out there with their knuckles and starts swinging. Start calling out the enemies of this country for who they are. Start taking action and going after them. That's what we want to see. Now, I commend certain senators, for example, like Ted Cruz, who has done that in many degrees. So again, I can't condemn everyone, but I am expressing my frustration that for every Cruz we have 10 others just sitting there, just existing. And I wonder why. Why are we not putting forth a unified face? Why don't we have the numbers showing up for things to accomplish things like our Democratic opposition is? These are very straightforward and honest questions that, I would like answered. When you have corporations going woke all of a sudden because they think it's a great idea and it protects them, or maybe their ideas are just dumb and they don't know what business is like, I get it, whatever. But when they start going after, making huge statements by financially hurting people, the threat to hurt them back is exactly what they needed. Normally, I'm for, I don't like going after corporations just because they have money. But when they're being a tool of the left, when they're being used to terrorize people and to coerce governments, state governments about their election laws, under the guise of racism, and you're gonna take that punk move, you know what? I'm like, tax them, take away their protections, go after them, strip them to pieces, because for too long, corporations have been taking us for granted because the conservatives have been protecting them, and we've been giving them, opportunities to find business deals abroad and to expand and grow and to make profit. And what's the thanks we get for it? The shenanigans we see now. You know why? Because they believe the left will hurt them and we can't. That's the honest reason. There is a simple but they don't have any compassion in their heart to think about, what right or wrong is they're looking at what's the easiest way for us to exist and make money. You know what? The left will hurt us, but the conservatives will just complain and go away. You know what? That day needs to end. They need to know that, we can hurt you too. But what you need to do is be on the side of right, not on the side of what's easy. You took the easy way, you're going to pay. That's the way we need to be. It's come to that. You can shy away from that all you want, but it's come to that. Look, your enemy is going to crush you by any means necessary. And you're standing there wondering what you're going to do about it. And while you're wondering and while you're saying, well, we should, be careful what we do here and here. Yeah, we should think ahead and forecast. But if you don't have any political weapons in your fist, no one is going to take you seriously. I guess in the end, what I'm asking is for the Republican Party to revamp itself to where people can take it seriously again.
You've been listening to Rage of the Age. If you loved today's podcast, make sure to leave a review on the media you're listening through. Secure future episodes by heading over to rageoftheage.com and clicking the RSS feed button. Until next time, this has been Rage of the Age.